Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our first edition of Pedia Online Poetry Festival, organized by Ideas in Progress in association with Padasala. Thank you all for being here. My name is Deepak. I'm the presenter of today's session. Pedia Online Poetry Festival, POP Festival, is an attempt to explore the versification practice of English poets of the day. In the four sessions in this first edition of the event, we have four poets in focus who shall be listened to, and we have four others who shall carry the conversation with those in focus. We will close each session with a reading of the poem by the guest poet who chairs the session. At the outset, let me introduce the two organizations that have come together to make this event possible. Ideas in Progress, an organization that had been engaging with the society for over the past 20 years, helps to bring about spontaneity in expression by kindling the aesthetic sensibility within through a creative process. They open up opportunities to engage with artists from various fields, including poets, musicians, painters, sculptors, film and theater enthusiasts, to share, nurture, guide, and motivate creative engagement. It thereby attempts to fill the ideological vacuum by spurring original thought in a critical endeavor. Renowned theater practitioner and founder of Abhinaya Theatre Group, Mr. Raghutaman, sculptor, painter, and retired principal of Fine Arts College, Mr. N.N. Brimson, National Award-winning Indian film critic and documentary filmmaker, Dr. C.S. Venkateshwaran, senior journalist and former chief of bureau of The Hindu, Mr. Gauri Dasan Nair, a music therapist, performing artist, professional trainer in Hindustani music, and head of the Department of Philosophy in University College Trivandrum, Dr. T.K. Sanida, Malayalam poet and painter, Mr. George, are only a few among the many who formed this organization. In collaboration, we have with us Padasala, which is an informal collective of friends at Sri Shankaracharya University of Sanskrit, which was formed in 2015 to inspire, engage, and involve the academia with the society, thereby trying to bridge the gap formed due to differences of varied kinds. Our focus is on academic engagements, and therefore our target is creating brighter minds. It had always stood for making knowledge available for everyone. This venture is one such. Now, let me introduce the curator of this webinar, as well as the chair of today's session, Mr. Chandramohan. Mr. Chandramohan S. is an Indian English Dalit poet and literary critic based in Trivandrum, Kerala. Warscape Verses, published in 2014, was his first collection of poems. Letters to Namdeo Dasan is his latest collection. A shortlist for Srinivas Royal Poetry Prize 2016 and a fellowship at the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa in 2018 are some of his most notable accolades. I take this opportunity to welcome him and thank him for having made this event possible. Before we begin, a few quick housekeeping guidelines for this webinar. The poet in focus will first read out her poem, and then the second poet shall engage in a conversation with her. While they are in conversation, participants can ask questions using the chat feature of Zoom. May we also request you to maintain your video and audio on mute until or unless asked to unmute. This evening session will be recorded and uploaded on our YouTube channel for the benefit of those who may have missed the event or wish to revisit it at a later date. On behalf of Ideas in Progress and Padasala, may I thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to your participation in this and future sessions organized by us. It is indeed my pleasure to introduce and welcome the poet in focus of the second day of our event, Mrs. Nitoo Das. Nitoo Das is a birder, caricaturist, and poet born in Assam but has been living in Delhi since 1994. She teaches English at Indraprastha College for Women, University of Delhi. Her PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University dealt with constructions of the Assamese identity under the British. Her poetry has been published in journals like Poetry International Web, Pratilipi, News India, Eclectica, Seven Sisters Post, Northeast Review, Folk Waters Magazine, Poetry with Prakriti, Vayavya, etc. Her first collection of poetry, Bouquet, was published in 2008, and her second, Cyborg Proverbs, in 2017, and the third, Crow Bite, a month back in November 2020. Her interests include birding and bird photography, fractals, comic books, horror films, poetry as hypertext, and translation from Assamese to English. The influence of these resonate in her poems too. Her poetry works with voice, soundscapes, and comic defamiliarization. Ma'am, we are indeed honored to have you with us in this event as our poet in focus. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak. Thank you, Chandramohan, for inviting me here today. Um, as Deepak has informed us, I will read a few poems, and I'll read some brief poems, and then perhaps we can have a discussion after that, Chandramohan, if that's okay with you. I can start now. When you were chatting earlier before the event actually formally started, I'm actually not very sure what I'm going to read today, but I guess maybe a few poems from Cyber Proverbs and a couple of poems from Crowbite, which is my new book, which was published just last month. And the first poem that I'm going to read today is one of my own favorites. It's called Jokhini, and it's a poem about an Assamese spectral figure, something like a witch figure, but I don't really prefer the use of the word witch because it has various other connotations. So Jokhini is specific to Assam, and this poem, even though I don't really like using this kind of definitions about what is prose and what is poetry, you can see that there's a kind of a shifting back and forth between the play between the whites on the page. And so I'm going to read Jokhini. It's a slightly longish poem. Okay then. Jokhini. I love this tree. Do you know the tree outside Dattada's house? The one just across the garden? It's a nice tree, a flowering tree. Throughout the year, tiny white flowers bloom all over the body of the tree. It's a shame I can't remember the name of the tree. I might have known it once, but not any longer. I love sitting on this particular branch. It curves so beautifully and fits me so well. When I sit here with my legs swinging in the air, 1, 2, 1, 2, I can see right into Dattada's bedroom. I watch him sleep every night. I can follow his dreams as he tosses and turns on the bed that belonged to his grandmother. Sometimes he wakes up, gets out of bed, and looks out of the window. I almost feel his eyes on me. Does he know that I'm here? Does he know that I watch him night after night, waiting for him to come out, waiting for him to touch my tree, waiting for him to touch me? But no, he doesn't see me. He only sees me in his dreams, sees my eyes as sharp as curses, sees my hair that burns in the wind, sees me naked. Sometimes I get bored, I sing, I talk to myself, I play with my hair. The day irritates me and I try to escape between the leaves and the white flowers. When the night arrives, with its harsh whisper of consent, I feel better. I've taken to laughing a lot. Everything amuses me, the insects that I catch and tear apart, the children on the way home after play, Mrinal mauling his little cousin's fresh press. Everything amuses me. With his inked fingers, his pajamas, and his sad dog eyes, even Dattada seems funny. And I can't stop laughing. I laugh because I've nothing else to do. My laugh becomes one with the wind and the pollen and the cries of the children. I know I can wait forever, but it's tiring. When will the pig come out and piss on my tree? When? When I want to go and pull him out of the window. I want to scratch him in anger, but I can't. It's not allowed to me. My feet will always walk away from me, away in the other direction. My feet, my feet, my poor, poor feet. I seem to remember a time when I had feet, real feet, and not the ones that I have now, always turned away from me, annoyed with me. However, I cannot be very sure. I'm never very sure of most things. So I moan and scream and shake the tree until the white flowers fall, like dust to the ground. The white flowers fall like dust to the ground. Thank you. So this was Jokini. And I thought I will read I have this very long series called The Poetry of Everyday Life. And it's a long series, but made up of very tiny poems, and uh, usually about objects. And I'll read some from this series. This is called The Poetry of Everyday Life 2. Pencil. I'm thin, leaden yet light. I'm that fine line on white. I'm zigzag flowering wood that smells of childhood. Use me, blunt me, and make me grow again. My death in pointed perfection repeated until your fingers can hold me no more. Chew on me and suck when you think I taste good. Caesars. I'm a right-handed conspiracy, an unknown quality, iron nailed into an X. A swooping gull, a mouth that closes, opens, opens, closes over swift lines that divide. Razor. I mark the beginning of knowledge. Use me on a body that knows of sin, of hidden places, of new things. I harvest hair, I eat skin. I want to read one more poem from this series. This is in the other, just let me find it. The same series, but it is on different pages. Can't find it. Okay. Handbag. After many years, there is a cleanliness drive, disemboweling at midnight. Here are bus tickets to nowhere, stubs of coal that could kill eyes if applied, pens that know many tricks, coins in every little crevice of pockets torn in some unmentionable war, mint wrappers, soft with age, a long ago flower, a rubber band that sticks to an eraser, a note about a French thinker. This handbag is punishment, a forest of bank slips and keys, pins that dream of clasping hair someday, and a lipstick, pure fire red, a new fetish to forget the paleness of death. Do you have any questions, or if not, I can continue. If you want to interrupt and ask me anything, you're welcome.
So I think maybe we can have a we can raise some questions like just talk about poetry as such. So I was curious like you're quite a senior poet. You've been writing for maybe like I don't know 15 years or so, more than that I believe.
Or more
So
than
like
that, I guess.
yeah, yeah. So usually people say Indian English poetry is too elitist. It's very politically pasteurized, etc. Right? So do you
Mhm.
have a take on it? Like, do you think Indian English poetry continues to be elitist, or like there are issues about lack of inclusion of various voices, or like do you feel that you're often pigeonholed as a poet for the Northeast or something like that?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. I would say that the history of Indian poetry in English is a colonial legacy, right? We can't really ignore or deny that part of our legacy. It's there. It's part of who we are. It's part of our skins, and obviously, people who started writing maybe from the 19th century onwards in English. Obviously, it meant that there were people who had access to certain kinds of education, certain kinds of spaces which were denied to people from the margins and people who were not really there as part of the uh, mainstream scheme of things. And it is also, I think, quite clear to me because I have been um, on the margins, watching in, looking in, and I've always realized that especially where around 10, 15 years ago, there was um, I think a kind of gatekeeping in the scene, and it may still continue. But I actually have not really been a part of many of these cliques of Indian poets in English. I have stayed away very consciously, very deliberately stayed away from the cliques, the many cliques that are that are there. I'm sure Chandramohan, you know about it. So I think one of the main things about the way I see myself as someone who's a part of this particular space is that I have deliberately stayed away from engaging with almost, even though it seems where I don't know, it's perhaps not the right word to use, but I have stopped engaging. Sometimes I don't engage if I feel like, it's a conversation or a discussion that will take us nowhere. And the idea of the question of pigeonholing, it's sometimes I actually think that it is a label that I may want to use, especially the label that you have pointed out, the one about being a poet from the Northeast, because sometimes one needs to deliberately use whatever is available, whatever whatever political space, ideological space is available to us. And I think even if it may be just tokenism, or people just want to seem politically correct, even though they may actually not be so. But then even if that little space is, one can grab that space and use it for our own political questionings or subversions. And I think I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. It was a difficult question that you suddenly posed there, Chandramohan. You should have told me earlier that you were going to ask me such questions. I would have maybe thought of it a little.
No, like often I think writers from the margins, they like someone like me who identifies as a Dalit poet writing in English, or any marginalized identity for that matter, they often might worry that they would not be on a platform if those identity markers weren't there. Like they are often in a platform or in an anthology because of the pressures of political correctness on the part of the editor.
Yeah.
So if you look at important anthologies of poetry like the one edited by G. Thile, Blood Axe Book of Indian English Poetry, I think none of the Northeast voices were included, including
I think
Robin.
there was discussion about that.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
several critics and poets also pointed out at the time when the book was published. Yeah, I remember that discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe we've come a long way in the last 15 years or so. Today, in the more I don't know, online enabled era, like probably now with a lot of readings and things, I believe there are a huge number of poets now, right? Not really huge, but maybe hundreds of poets now of various various I don't know.
Use.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the thing is, I was thinking like how you look how you look about the last 15, the evolution of poetry in the last 15 years. You would be familiar with how it was in, say, 2008, say, how that is in 2020, with, I believe, a lot of
Yeah.
Instagram.
Actually, in 2005, I started this poetry blog. It's a long time ago, 2005. It was part of my, I was doing some research on poetry as hypertext. So I started a blog. It was called Rivers Blue Elephants. And it was, in those days, even if I say so myself, it was quite a popular blog. And I had fun when I I was running it, posting there. And at that time, even while I was conducting my research, I realized the potential of the internet, and it is especially because earlier you could only be readers, but then with the coming of the internet, you could also become writers, and I thought that was quite at that time. Of course, I was slightly naive about the democratization possibilities of the internet, and I thought that this is going to really change the way we understand poetry. You don't really need the poet as staying in this ivory tower and kind of proclaiming from a distance, to the common masses meaning us as readers. And so that I thought would bring about a change. So a change I think was brought about because of the internet, the kind of blogs that happened, the kind of the way people started online journals, and a lot of publication, the face of publication, I think, changed in the last 10, 15 years. And also, I think a lot of translation, not the kind of translation that used to happen earlier, but different kinds of translations have been taking place now. And of course, I also believe that sometimes sometimes what you've pointed out, that the editor wants to be politically correct and wants to seem inclusive rather than actually being inclusive. But like I said earlier, as my answer to your previous question, that that maybe that space, you can, if you want to, appropriate that space for yourself rather,
Yeah, exactly.
and use it for your own. Use it for your own.
Yeah. So then,
Yeah,
like,
I think there has been a revolutionary change in the way we understand poetry, and I think the internet have a huge role to play in this.
That's great. That's great. So maybe you would like to read some more poems, and then we could talk about Mia poetry or something like that that has come up from the Northeast recently. I don't know. Like, so last time we met in 2015 or so. There wasn't this word.
Right.
There wasn't this word of Mia poetry.
2016, I think, 2016.
Yeah. So there was this Mia poetry, or this much of, I don't know, assertion from the Northeast had not really arrived. Arrived. So today there is like Mia poetry in Bangla, in Assamese, and English, I believe. Like, people like Shalim Hussain are doing a tremendous amount of work. So maybe, yeah, we'll talk about that later. Like, okay, you could read a few.
Okay. Let's see. I'll read this poem from Crowbite. A lot of my poems in Crowbite are about Meghalaya. It's a place that's very close to close to my heart. My father was born in Meghalaya. I mean, at that time, Meghalaya was a part of Assam, and I have this great closeness, to this place, a kind of nostalgia, not the kind of nostalgia that I feel for Assam, because that is it's a more an angry kind of nostalgia. But the nostalgia for Meghalaya, I think, is more, it's slightly different. I don't really have words for it. But anyway, this is called Bus to Sora. Okay. And I was this is actually a real trip to Sora, and we were on a bus. There were like several poets in this bus. Anyway, I'm a bus making my way to Sora. I'm cut with significance. Symbols mark my flanks. I hunger up hills carrying dialects of green, and the sun in a glider, and my heart in an engine, and the world in anger, and a rider in harness, and smoke sticking an address, and demons in my ears. And a chorus of groans, it with each break of strength, with each shake of thought, with each ache of breath. I'm a creature that cannot leave the pines alone. I'm divided into disasters. I want ghosts to thud against my bumpers. I'm a tourist via stream. I'm a political party blocked in a dream. I'm historical, a zoo of sounds. I'm a walking monument to myself. I scorn vipers in the rain. I see my body through cracks in glass. It is strewn on the road, kicking and screaming in whispers. So, poem about.
So could you briefly explain, like the process of your new book, and like how that's distinct from your previous two works, and like the act of finding a publisher and the right kind of.
Yeah. So Crowbite is actually a tiny book. I really like it because it's so perfect, because my earlier books are quite thick by poetry standards. There are lots of poems here and lots of poems here as well, Boki and cyber proverbs. But Crowbite is, it just happened, especially because of the virus. One is sitting at home, disturbed, and about the way things are going on in the world. And Dibya had actually asked me to work on a book, And at the time, I didn't really have, I don't know, the resources to um, think about publishing so soon. But then but then Crowbite happened, and I like it because it has my drawings. I really like the fact that I had time to draw for it. All these drawings here, and then the page markers are also there are page markers which are also my drawings. My author pick is also drawing, not the usual author pick, and it was also because to go back to your first question. I also feel that it's important for poetry to be published by independent publishers. You could call it an independent, you could call it, I don't know, a political position. And you have so many people who are so ambitious, they want to be published by mainstream publishers, they want to be published by the best. And then I have not really been too ambitious in that regard, and never really been concerned about being published by big houses. And I think I'm very happy to actually say this, and I say it with great pride, that all my 3 books have been published by independent publishers. It's very important to support independent publishers. And Crowbite also, I wanted to show my support for Red River in some way, and also tell Divya that he's doing such amazing work for poetry in our country, and also because he's involved in other other projects too, like translation, etc. He's like a one-man army. He's doing he's doing the designing, he's doing the commissioning, he's doing everything. And I wanted to show my heartfelt support for Red River and the Pachuti. So that's how Crowbite happened.
That's really great. But I've heard remarks about poetry that there are more poets than there are readers. Is that something you worry about? That you worry about like number of readers a typical poet has, or like typically poetry has, or if you compare, like if Assamese is a language where you have roots in, the other language you have roots in. Do you think the literary ecosystem, the number of magazines, like suppose if the Indian English poet writes a good poem, I don't know where he sends it. Yes, for that it's published, and the poetry ecosystem knows that this poem is published. But like if it is if it's for a poet writing in Malayalam, for example, there are magazines like Mathrubhumi, a Madhyamam, like Bhasha Poshni, like a lot of magazines where these poems can be sent, will be published, and it'll be in the discourse. So, but Indian English, I don't think there is such a magazine, such a platform, like a weekly journal or a monthly journal or whatever.
There are lots of little magazines in Assamese as well, for me as well.
But
and it is, I think the little magazine culture has to survive in spite of everything, and I think that's one of the ways in which the various languages of our country are, I don't know, maybe struggling but still surviving. And I think Assamese anyway has a very very strong position, literary position in a way, within Assam itself. So people are, sometimes I think, quite happy and aware of the shortcomings, but also quite happy where they are. And yes, you're right. Indian writing, we don't really have the kind of sustained sustained engagement with the little magazine culture, and which is why I think that that the internet is perhaps the way out. And I also don't think it's a bad thing that there are so many readers. There's so many poets now, and I don't know if it's true, but I have maybe because I've not really been concerned too much about readership, in the sense of thinking about publishing a book only so that I will find readers. I think that even if I post a poem on Facebook, I'll still find readers, and I think that is important. That is something important that one has to realize now. You have to realize that there are all these spaces available. It depends entirely upon you how you use those spaces. And if someone is happy, just publishing or putting their work out on Facebook or on Instagram, I think we should welcome that, and really not be very condescending about it or look down upon such writers as Instagram poets. And I really hate that term, Instagram poets, as there's so much condescension and so much um, this kind of high and mighty feeling about we are the intelligentsia, and we're looking, and we are superior, we know everything about poetry, and these are people who are just kind of trying to usurp our our what our heritage. I don't know what they mean actually, because there's so much pettiness in the way they talk about poets who use spaces like Instagram. I just can't tolerate it.
I believe Instagram poets have much more a higher audience and reach than the usual page poets.
Yeah, I
They
guess
that,
so.
they can be happier. Yeah, I think there is a question in the chat. You could take it up or like maybe read more.
Okay. Yeah, I was a child when I started writing. I was very excited about the whole act of writing. We used to, like, throughout school, my school friends and I, we would take turns writing. We would write all the time. But then, and of course, you would be published in school magazines, college magazines. And I was also published in my university magazine. And then I stopped writing for a while. For around a decade, I stopped writing. I mean, I didn't stop writing. I stopped thinking about publishing my work. And then uh, I was on study leave in order to complete my PhD. And then I also started working on my on that research project that I had referred to earlier. And then I went back to writing in a big way. And inspiration, I find the word inspiration slightly problematic. I try not to use the word inspiration because the moment you use the word inspiration, you go back to this very, I think, feudal ideas of of receiving grace, or some kind of almost I don't know, God-like intervention in the creative process. And I don't really believe in stuff like that. I believe that writing is hard work. It's a lot of editing. It's a lot of revising. So I don't really believe that in the word inspiration. I may think about the process, but inspiration is a kind of a no for me. But otherwise, I would say that the things I see around me, common objects. I read those poems about razors or pencils, or these are things that excite me. For a long time now, for almost 10 years now, I've been writing about birds. Words inspire me to write. And but it's not just, it's not again, it's not an uncomplicated not an uncomplicated uh, response to the way I photograph birds or look at birds. It's something to do with how to represent, how to verbalize, how to find words for um, an experience that I wasn't really aware of before 2009, 2010, for instance. And I also um, used to think a lot about voicing and voices, about silenced voices, trying to find voices for silenced voices. I'm not really, I don't really think about poetry in that manner now. And if you look at a lot of my poems, which are published in Cyber Proverbs, they were written earlier, but were published only in 2017. A lot of those poems are about women who had been silenced, historically silenced, or trying to give them voice, which I'm slightly amused by now when I look back upon this sense of saving them from the silences of history. I no longer am in that phase. But generally, these are the things that excite me. Issues of representation, voicing, birding, and photography at the moment. Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Deepa.
Yes, thank you. I have one more question. You claim to
Yeah.
hold prose as your first love and have said that you confined yourself to only poems when you started your research work. Now, in the light of your contribution to Centerpiece and the Himalayan Arc, are you planning to take to prose or like shift to prose or rather like delve more deep into that genre which you think is your first love?
Mm, actually, the pieces in the books you mentioned are also poetry.
Okay.
There were a mix of genres. There were a mix of genres in those books. My first love is actually the short story. The short story as a form, which I really love. And in fact, Crowbite, the title Crowbite comes from. I think of it as a poem, but you may read it as a prose piece as well. This is Crowbite with my photograph on the left, and so actually it is. You could say that Crowbite is prose if you want to, but like I said earlier, I don't really believe in these definitions of prose and poetry. And yeah, I guess I also love the essay as a form, and I feel quite sad that I don't really have the time to actually sit down and write essays. But yeah, short stories. I would love to go back very seriously to writing short stories if I had the time. That is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Maybe
you.
you'd like to read a few poems from the latest collection. I don't know.
Yeah, I read Bastasora. Let's see if I can read something. Sorry. Uh, excuse me. I have this horrible cough still. I think I'll read The Cat's Daughter. It's one of my favorites at the moment. I've been reading it everywhere. And it's published, I think, for the first time a couple of years ago. And it's been published in a couple of magazines and journals in print, online, and it's also forthcoming in another book. And it's there. It's there in Crowbite. It's a poem that refers an Assamese folk tale. Um, it's a longish folk tale. I don't really talk about the entire folk tale in this poem. Um, it is about how a cat who is pregnant and once is craving fish, but the house where she goes to have fish, the woman is also pregnant, so she never gives the cat any of the fish that is cooked in the woman's home. So the cat says, whatever is in your belly should come to me, and whatever is in my belly should go to you. The cat's daughters. Prologue. We grew inside our mother. She whispered to us, "You are mine, mine," not knowing better, we agreed. Beside her skin's luminous husk, we were foam fillings, limbs crisp like clouds, permeable blobs. We stayed on hold, slowly expanding, surging, slippery like similes. We imagined our mother's unhurried beauty, dark and large with a brooding discretion, bristly from a distance. While we floated and sighed, she offered us a lullaby. Oh, I wanted fish, and that woman took all the fish and gave me bones, until I grew thin and shrill. We imagined our mother's round-eyed anger, hissing with a hankering for fish. Shush, my sister, don't disturb her now, we told each other. She purred. Oh, how I hated that woman, until one day I could take it no longer and said, "Whatever's in my belly will be yours, and what's in yours will be mine." I wanted her fish-fed fullness, but I received you, my daughters. We imagined our mother's curse-laden yowl as we flowed and glowed inside our cradle. Her maw was an open crin, tail upraised, ear-spitting noise hunched twice over. She was love and fear all at once. Her many children became two. We two. We woke up to multiple nipples. We were human, unlike our mother. Epilogue. We imagine our mother aging. We worry about her. She tells us, if the basil dies and the milk curdles, come save me. And so the basil dies and the milk curdles, and we go off on our travels. No, we marry neither the merchant nor the river prince. We birth neither pestles nor pumpkins. We want to find our mother, see her silver eyes, touch her old fur, kiss her fish mouth again. Thank you.
That's great. So are there more questions? Like, I'd like to mention about the the very fertile or maybe very symbiotic relationship that the Northeast has with the English language. Is that true? For example, if the rest of India looks like you've been an English teacher, and a lot of people look at English as a tool for upward social mobility. There are a lot of militant clarion calls within the Dalit Bhojan community to learn English, use English as a whatever as a weapon to intervene in the national discourse. But if you look at Northeast has English as one of their mother tongues. Is that true? At least some tribes or like some people have English, as their mother tongue.
Not in Assam, not in Assam.
Like somewhere in Northeast, right? Some place in Northeast, right? So maybe that is like, I don't know.
You see the trajectory of just a second. My internet connection is unstable. It says, "Can you hear me?"
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear or see? Okay, because there's a notification coming in saying your internet connection is. Yeah. So I was saying that the trajectory, the history of Assam is not not the way you have mentioned just now. It's very different because Hinduism actually is the way it operates is different from the other states in the Northeast. So also you see, I was the first girl in my family who was sent to an English medium school, so I can't really speak for other people. And I was, I mean, people who received an education before me, they all studied in Assamese medium schools. So as the first person, I was actually the first person who was sent to an English medium school. And so my experience of English or being within English as a language is very different from what you have stated just now. First was I don't know, maybe an escape when I was a child, escape into a different language, escape into the stories of a different language, and it was also a means of perhaps owning it, maybe appropriating it for my own purposes. But this is an individual's response to a largely historical question that you have just posed. Because I can't really say that I'm a part of that discourse because my experience as a person has been very, very different. Nobody at home speaks in English where I come from. So my experience is not what you have just stated.
Yeah, that's great. And do you feel that now that we write in English and deliberate in English, a part of the lived experience is being lost when we translate the lived experience in those languages, say Malayalam for me and Assamese for you, into English? Is that like we imagine a part of our expression or something is being dented while being rendered into English?
I have slightly weird ideas about translation. I don't really. I believe in translating the short story as a genre. That's what I really believe in. Poetry sometimes I feel is, I don't know, slightly difficult, just to put it mildly. And especially if the language uses very intense wordplay or very intense specific uh, life experiences. And sometimes things may be untranslatable. I don't really know. I've never really tried to translate poetry. I have translated short fiction, and I would say, of course, these are things that translators or translation theorists have been talking about for quite some time now. So I'm not saying anything new. That you keep the words, you keep the experiences intact, and don't really try to translate, and don't really try to annotate. I don't really believe in annotation. There are a lot of Assamese words in my English writing. There are a lot of not just Assamese words, Hindi words. I've lived here for so many years, so Hindi has become part of my vocabulary. So sometimes Hindi also kind of intrudes, becomes a part of what I'm writing. And sorry, excuse me. So this I feel that languages, in spite of the hierarchies of history, of how, what kind of access we want, what kind of opportunities we think are available to us because of certain languages. In spite of that, especially as someone who writes in English, which is considered, a, a language of power and authority, and I mean, all of us, we are part of. We know what post-colonial studies, what they tell us, the theorists. So so if there is this language which is so powerful, then the only way that we can perhaps downplay its uh, power is to try and see whether other languages can coexist in the same sentence without really forcing us to annotate or give glossaries or try to explain meanings and experiences to an audience.
That's great. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Maybe Deepak has some remarks. I don't know.
I think there's a question here.
There's a question in the chat
Oh,
box.
yeah. Okay.
Kinshuk Gupta wishes to know the process of writing, as you take it. What is your process of writing?
Sorry. It's different for different poems, and I don't have one fixed way of writing something. And sometimes I jot down points when something when something I think needs to be written down. I make some notes sometimes, and sometimes I free write. I just write whatever comes into my head, and just kind of free write. And sometimes I just play with words, just to see what works, which is almost like a mechanical way of trying to see whether this word sits well with this other word, and whether some meaning can erupt out of forcefully, putting in these two words or these two images together. So sometimes it's just a lot of playing around with words and phrases. And but like I said, many a time it's just sitting down and working out, whether this slant rhyme works, whether this image works, and whether whether some kind of, whether I have been able to translate whatever I had in my imagination, whether I've been able to translate that into a workable image or a workable phrase. That's it. Thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you. Another thought that I was having was you seem to be very interested in bird watching and photography.
Mm-hmm.
So how far do you think that has had its resonance in your writing in any way? Because definitely caricature is another interest of yours, and we see you doing that along with your poetry in your books, especially in your new book, as you said. So how far has bird watching and photography reflected on your poetry, or like has taken you to poems?
Yeah, I have. I've answered this several times earlier, actually. In a couple of interviews, I've talked to people about this. I've written about it too. When I first started birding and bird photography, I thought it would help me in understanding my own obsessions around issues of representation. How do you see something, and how do you replicate it in whatever you recreate? Is it imitation? Is it copying? Is it, what is it? And however, I got so involved, so passionately involved with birding and bird photography that somehow, for a long time, I actually seemed to move away from writing for, I think, for 5-6 years. I mean, I was writing again, but I was writing only about birds. I was only writing about photography, and and so yeah, a lot of my writing is now about birds, and I can read some bird poems if it's okay with you. I can read.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
I think you may be the only poet in India who has this passion, and so I think your bird poems is really unique. I don't know.
there is Anand Vishwanatha who also is who writes poetry, and he has this very I think fine collection called Stray Birds, and he's also a bird photographer, and he writes about his birds too. And I think a lot of poets, writers, I know they do write about birds. Maybe not in this very taxonomic way that I write, but yeah, I mean, birds are common metaphors, right? So it's not like you can escape birds. But yeah, there are lots of I have lots of bird poems, and I don't really know what I should read now. Um, I think I'll read something from Crowbite. Again, this is one of my. It's a poem I like, and it's called "On the Shyness of Birds." Sorry, on the shyness of birds. In that shiver of leaves, a certain caution lives. It is a thought as precise as suspicion. Then, inside the gaps linking rain and dawn, falls the sure cusp of song. They are not afraid, no. Every move covers the hills, navigates the clouds. There is escape, quick whip strokes in the sky, a rustle of bodies in the scrubs. But they are never here. Their songs are shadows. The leaves are shaken by visitations. The only verification is shit. This is a poem about shy birds. Sometimes it's very difficult to photograph birds that uh, uh, don't want to be photographed. Especially the ones that are rare, or they don't like being photographed. How much time do we have? Can you let me know, Chandramohan?
I believe like
Start.
it's already like maybe like 10-15 minutes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Mm. I read How to Photograph an Oriental Whitetail because this is both about photography and about birding. And this is a very early poem. I think I wrote it in 2009. And um, and the Oriental Whitetail, its name has changed. It's now called the Indian Whitetail. And but my title hasn't changed. And it's a very common bird. It's a very common bird, garden bird in India. It's green and yellow, but has rims around its eyes. How to photograph an Oriental Whitetail. Quiet. This is when I make a late entry, shushing things hanging upside down from clusters of firebush red, nectar mongering, singing, mocking, zooming between leaves, carrying this object around my neck. Quiet. This is when I alter shape, turn minute to monitor green, check to see eye to eye, the leaf with an eye. Aloof, mint pinned, impatient millisecond of chirp, and we are one. Quiet. This is when I crawl between shades of branches. The shudders say we are here, cross-haired and calm, aiming at the distinct tremolo, climbing, chanting silence, slyly, slowly, the staring, all-seeing, white-rimmed eye waits for my finger, and we are tricked by light, alert, in concert, and full of wit, quiet. So, two poems, bird poems for you, Deepak.
Yeah, I've seen a photograph of yours in Scroll in which
Mhm.
a bird is delicately perching on a flower. So
Mm-mm.
the pistil of the flower has to balance the weight of the bird, and it's so delicate. Something so like something so delicate, and it's like a delicate perch, like that. We choose a word in a poem. So maybe that's a I don't know. Yeah. So if there are more questions, I don't know. Deepak.
I don't think there are any more questions now.
I
Great.
think there aren't any more questions.
Mm-hmm. I think we have spoken for quite some time.
Yeah, probably like I'll pose a one last question in the sense, um, like mostly when we speak to people from Assam, be it filmmakers, be it poets,
Mm-hmm.
mm, they mostly speak about Buddhist philosophy and how that has influenced their poetry. Uh, like many people whom I have spoken to often like refer to that. So, is there some connection that you draw with Buddhist philosophy or like ideas that you are like interested in that you have tried to bring into your poems? Your work?
There isn't much Buddhism in Assam. There is a lot of Buddhism in, say, for instance, Arunachal, but not in Assam. But yeah, Buddhism. I have written a couple of poems about around Buddhism, and it's as a religion. I mean, as I'm an atheist, but as a religion, it kind of I find it interesting, and I find the idea of the Buddha interesting. I have in Crowbite also there is a poem about what I saw uh, in Tawang, the Tukje Chueling Nunnery. And then I have a poem, a rain poem about lava, a place called lava, which is also actually about the Buddha. And I find the image of the Buddha quite quite fascinating. I also think of him as a kind of a revolutionary.
Thank you. Chandramohan, so probably we could close the session.
Yeah.
And I would also request you to read a poem to like
Yeah, please read a
conclude.
poem, Chandramohan now.
Yeah. I'll read a poem. So that we can call it a day. So I'll choose this particular poem from my this collection, which was published in Canada. It's
Mm-hmm.
awaiting a publisher in India. It's called Love After Babel. So I had attempted a experiment in the form of a newspaper report that that taking cue from many experimental poets worldwide. So the poem is in the form of a newspaper report. So I'll read out the report to you. Accident at a river. Accident at a river. Accident following wrangling over naming of rivulets. Staff reporter. Company, November 5. 20 bodies of poets and translators were recovered from the shores of a river near the state capital. The bodies were like couplets intertwined, and the river crisscrossed a border between two states built along thoughts on linguistic states. The bodies were like couplets intertwined with the were like couplets intertwined, and the river crisscrossed the border between the two states built along thoughts on linguistic states. The camp director had warned the participants of the translation workshop that spirits of other participants could leap into theirs, and each of them were given aliases, like a plastic steering oar that never yields to either streams of the river. The poets claimed that to be baptized in a form of poetry in another language, it was necessary to nosedive into a particular river. Some of the translators were also language teachers. They allegedly danced on the hanging bridge, hoping that their students weren't around. Another prospective reason for the onset of the wrangle was that poets demanded dope during their short recesses. They insisted that poems be written and consumed in the same tongue, like dope bought directly from the source before being chopped up. Some poets may have died due to narcotic overdose, can only be confirmed after autopsy reports are made public. Yeah, thank you.
Lovely, Chandramohan. It was
Yeah,
quite lovely.
thank you.
I was actually some days ago. I was reading this article of yours about Litfest, and so beautifully satirical, just like tone that you have in this poem of yours.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, on behalf of Chandramohan ji, then Padasala and Ideas in Progress, I express my sincere gratitude to you for having consented to join us and for having given us a treat for the past 1 hour. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nitoo ji. Thank you, Chandramohan. Um, I request all participants to join us tomorrow for our third session. Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Thank
There
you,
are some
Neetu.
comments in chat box. I can see them now. Thank you, Smita, Kinshuk. Thank you so much for your comments. And yeah, thank you, Deepak and
Thank you.
Chandramohan.
Thank you for agreeing when you're not really well.
Yeah, I still have this horrible cough. I couldn't read very well.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough energy, I think.
Mhm.
But thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.